Australia Post is a government-owned corporation with over 5,000 employees. It's mainly responsible for delivering parcels and post throughout Australia and also internationally. Despite having majority of the market, Australia Post has had to deal with some turbulent times in the recent few years due to some bad press, financial downturn, and overall view of bad service. This will be explored further later on as it caused some big changes within Australia Post. Australia Post is one of the Australian businesses that has so far stood the test of time. The fact that it's a government-owned corporation means that it was always going to be hard for it to fail as a business. One of the main strengths that the business holds is that it is a monopoly within the mail delivery industry, and even though the landscape of the industry has changed, with notably less deliveries over the past 5 years, they have managed to reinvigorate the business to ensure it can still be maintained as a successful business. Through the partnerships they have formed and the avenue to create a goods delivery service for online shoppers, as well as creating multiple delivery options for everyday Australians, Australia Post has managed to stay relevant to the Australian people. One of the main weaknesses that Australia Post has is that it will be quite hard to expand further on their business, and if they're unable to keep up with the market changes and what the Australian people need in regards to their delivery, they could really struggle as a business going forward. Other difficulties going forward will include changing the public perception on Australia Post. It's had a tough few years in regards to some of the decisions made by the board, coupled with a bad economic performance in 2014-15, along with the poor service that it was perceived to be providing. It has since partly rectified the problem by partnering with Qantas to form StarTrack, which has been a global delivery service used for online shoppers in particular. The partnership with Qantas and the formation of StarTrack has been one way that Australia Post has managed to counteract the downturn in traditional mail delivery. Although this has managed to fix the main concern for Australia Post in the short term, the question always begs, where to next? How are we best going to help our customers going forward? Australia Post has already revolutionised their industry by adding a service that benefits both the people of Australia as well as worldwide companies who use e-commerce as a revenue stream and selling avenue. While this has helped the business get out of a sticky situation where their post delivery was declining rapidly, as was their revenue to the point that they posted a loss, I think Australia Post could go one step further and create a business model that enables not only the continuation of a current service, but also adds a new revenue stream as well as the ability to saturate Australia with more post offices to make it more convenient to send and receive mail. This model follows a similar model to the Japanese post office, where they provide insurance services as well as being a bank. While Australia Post has started to explore this avenue with an insurance sector, I feel that becoming a fully fledged bank can have many more benefits. As with all new things, there are always considerations that need to be made in order to ensure that it will not be detrimental to the business going forward. However, I feel strongly that adding a banking sector to Australia Post has far more benefits than it does drawbacks, and I feel it could potentially reignite the original numbers in which traditional post has used and the effectiveness it can have. I feel that if done correctly, this can rectify some of the problems that have previously been stated with Australia Post, the main one being the public perception. The general public is known to have a dissatisfaction for the big four banks, and while it seems the government is hesitant to re-regulate the banking industry, opening up a bank for Australia Post could be a way of answering and becoming the people's bank and gaining some control over the big four banks, or at the very least provide an alternative that is more suitable to the people. In 2012, a public survey stated that 90% of people wanted the government to fix bank fees, 81% of people wanted the government to fix bank CEO salaries, and 74% of people wanted to ensure interest rates were pegged to the Reserve Bank's monthly interest rate determinations. If the Australian post banking sector can correctly rectify some of these problems that the Australian public have with the big four banks, it will be halfway there to making a successful transition into the banking sector and fixing some of the reputation problems that it has amongst the Australian public. Sometimes in business life cycles, there reaches a point where the product has no further to grow, and they have to experience a pivot and go a different direction in order to create revenue to further enhance the service that they provide. I feel that Australia Post has reached this stage, which is why we've chosen to go to a banking sector in order to create another option. With all options and different changes within businesses, this will have some effects on the BMC. I'll go over these individually to make sure that I don't miss anything. Key partners. The key partners are largely not affected by the proposal. There will, however, be a couple of additions, with the Reserve Bank of Australia becoming a partner, as well as other banks in Australia, as well as the rest of the world. Key activities. It is more than likely that key activities could experience a shift in what most commonly occurs within Australia Post. In adding the regular activities that have already been stated, more banking-based activities such as receiving, sending and depositing money will be added, as well as counting money, providing home loans and issuing credit cards. This would enable more shop fronts to be opened and could result in an increase in sales of goods from the post shop, as well as more convenient parcel delivery and collection. Key resources. The key resources that Australia Post possess will not change drastically. It is, however, expected that the resources will grow with more staff, more assets, and a whole new sector to explore. Value propositions. The value propositions may not change, however, if the model can be executed in a way that the Australian Post banking sector is seen as a bank for the Australian people, it may have a positive effect on some of the existing value propositions. If the Australian Post banking sector can rectify some of the problems that Australia see with the big four banks and provide an alternative, some of the poor press that has surfaced over the past few years could be forgotten about and very quickly have a positive effect on the business overall. Customer relationships. Customer relationships is the main area of the BMC that is set to improve and have a positive influence on the business as a whole. With the Australian Post banking sector idea, it will mean that there will be the ability to have more shop fronts, which in theory would be used as a regular bank. This does, however, mean that they will also be able to have a mail service attached to it. This means that the ease in which getting things delivered will improve. It will be faster and closer to pick things up if you miss the delivery, and you will not have to go as far out of your way. With an added revenue stream, there would also be the possibility to add an after-hours delivery service, which would increase customer satisfaction over time. Channels. The channels will still stay very similar, with just an added channel of the bank shop front and sending and receiving money to be added. While only a small addition, the reach of customers and the addition could be quite considerable. Customer segments. The customer segments is another area which will stay fairly similar. However, the things in which these customers could do will grow with the addition of the banking sector. The additions to customer segments would possibly be international businesses and foreign investors who may use the Australian Post banking sector. Cost structure. The cost structure would stay fairly similar, as well as the additional banking fees coming in and increase in the possibilities of other areas. Revenue streams. Revenue streams could potentially have the biggest change, with the big four banks posting a combined profit of $30 billion in the 2014-15 financial year. While only adding the one reference stream of the banking fees and interest, it opens up endless possibilities for other revenue streams to increase as well due to the increase in accessibility through more shop fronts and a wider recognition within the Australian public. Overall, I feel like a BMC is an important aspect to a business, as it forces you to look at the wider picture and who it can affect overall, rather than just a business plan which has a very angled opinion of how to grow the business forward for its own satisfaction. The BMC entails everyone that is included in the business, from customers to staff to key partners, which means that you get an overall picture of who's going to be affected by the change and if it's going to be a positive or a negative